My soon-to-be ex-spouse and I have been in marriage counseling since the beginning of the year. Arguments became cyclical and pointless. We haven't been intimate in more than a year, and he would get overly defensive when getting any kind of feedback. He's been staying with his parents for about a month for us to step away and take a break because we have been getting nowhere. Things had started to calm down, and our lease was supposed to be up at the end of November, so I started looking for apartments because part of our issue is that our place was way too small. I sent a link to my dream apartment, almost triple the size, in our budget, gas range. I really like to cook. All I did was send the link. I didn't say anything about how excited I was to find it at first. Immediately off the table because I'm not living in a studio. I don't feel safe in them. I asked that he at least gave me a chance to show him that it could be really great, and I had so many ideas that would make it feel safe. Additionally, there is a huge storage room with a washer/dryer hookup that could be used as a bedroom. Nope, wouldn't consider it. Wasn't at all curious about how I thought I could make it feel safe with separate spaces, or even gave me a chance to try. I pointed out all of the amazing things it had, offered the idea of turning the room into a bedroom, but no, I never got any more than, I don't like studios, I'm not going to live in one because I don't feel safe, and there's numerous issues. Okay, well, I'm willing to discuss these numerous issues, but I can't drop this without chewing on the what and why for me to sacrifice something that ticks off all of our boxes and then some, just because no is a complete sentence. I was crossing a boundary by asking to at least have a discussion about it. That's not how boundaries work, but more on that later. Mind you, this is the same person who refused to eat Brussels sprouts until they smelled my homemade ones, after making an entirely separate meal for him, and then, once it was his idea, he would eat them. If it was his idea, he could consider it, whatever it was. I looked at the apartment anyway, and it was even more perfect in person. Sent a picture of me standing in the spare room to show that it could be used as a bedroom. I was begging and pleading to at least discuss, to please let me talk you through my ideas on how to separate the spaces. After the third attempt, I saw that my needs, wants, desires couldn't even be brought to the table for discussion again, so I decided I was walking away from the table. I got the apartment. That is a boundary. I wasn't willing to continue feeling disregarded, so I walked away. Hitting the limit of what you are personally willing to put up with and the actions you take when you hit that limit is how you draw a boundary. FYI to no one in particular. It didn't have to be this apartment. I could have moved on if we actually discussed it. I could have handled continuing to live in our shitty complex until one showed up that he would be more willing to consider if he could have simply let me feel heard. I even told him that I let the realtor know that he may fill out an application, but that it may also just be me. I walked away from our shared table, but I left the door open behind me. We had therapy the next day, and I tearily explained the above. I also mentioned that I think there is a fundamental misunderstanding of what a boundary is. When our therapist asked for his thoughts on hearing me out, he started talking about my drinking. The fuck? Some context, since this is already 8,000 years long. I've struggled with alcohol and binge drinking over the years. Working at a dive bar for a decade, long undiagnosed ADHD and autism, and childhood trauma will certainly push a person in that direction. When my STBX and I got together, he knew I drank, and sometimes to excess. I did, over time, work on mitigating my drinking, but I've never completely stopped. When your favorite thing to do at the end of a long day is have a couple of beers and play video games, it's really hard to just completely stop, especially when you're practically a full-time caretaker, housewife, money manager, on top of working a full-time job, and none of your needs are being met in the relationship. Notice I'm not blaming him for my drinking, just that I was lonely, so I kept holding on to the one thing I knew that could help me unwind. It's really hard to kick a habit that you know works when you're constantly living through fight or flight, because it's bullying to point out how you have to actually move the shampoo bottles off the edge of the tub when you clean it, or you're met with a meltdown of an argument because going behind them to clean things that were already clean is insulting. So here I am, asking to have a discussion about something that clearly means a lot to me, and he completely pivots the conversation to how I've broken his trust by continuing to drink, and that while he's been thinking about what he needs to heal from his childhood trauma and narc parent, he needs a relationship with zero alcohol. He pointed out that he had drawn a boundary and said that he would leave if I continued. Well, buddy, you didn't leave. It's not a boundary if you don't have any follow-through. After the third or fourth time you said that you'd leave if I kept drinking, that's when you grow some balls and do it. Then he says that he's not even sure if he's able to be in a relationship right now or what he wants out of one. More context, because why the fuck not? Back in March, I came home after working overtime plus rehearsal for a play at our local community theater. He said that he would clean the apartment since I had been so busy. He had taken a 4-day weekend to do just that and take a break from a shitty job. I came home late at night and nothing had been done. The list of everything that I would need to do just started stacking up, and I just got more and more pissed. Did I have a few beers while I started cleaning at 10 p.m. after I had been up since 5:30 a.m.? Yes. Did it help? Probably not. I was by no means blackout drunk, but I was white hot with rage. I ended up breaking a window and a mirror because I had felt so lonely and unheard for so damn long, and it hurt so much to see it so clearly in my face, and I just wanted to physically feel what I couldn't get out of my chest. This breakdown became the crutch of every argument thereafter. I wrote a super long letter apologizing for my actions, but explaining how I had been sacrificing so many needs of mine to allow him space to heal from his own shit, and how lonely, unheard, and unseen I have felt for so long, pushing me to my limit. Well, no matter how many times I said in that letter that I wasn't blaming him, just trying to explain how I even got to that point, all he heard was that I wasn't taking accountability and trying to make it his fault for my drunken rage. Okay. Fast forward to August. It's my birthday weekend. I got into a bike wreck, incredibly sore, lots of road rash, etc., so that sucked. Then, my soul cat of 14 years passed away from an asthma attack in the middle of the night just a couple of days later. We had already agreed to him going to his parents for a month, but this is what accelerated it. I didn't feel like I could grieve with him there. If I started crying, he would start crying, and then I felt like I was taking care of him when it was my cat, my best friend. My body is broken, my soul is crushed, and yet I am the one making sure that her body is taken care of. So yes, I had some damn beers in the evenings. I came home, sat on the landing, drank a couple of beers, and scrolled TikTok until he was in bed before I went in. One afternoon, he comes out and asks for a check-in. Okay, this doesn't happen often. Sure. He said that he understands why I'm drinking more. I wasn't, I just didn't have the energy to be discreet, but that he's worried that I wasn't giving myself the space to grieve. That pissed me off, and I told him so. I said that I will do what I have to do to keep functioning until he's out of the apartment, so I can grieve alone, because I can't with him here. The next day, I told him I wanted to talk about that conversation. I wanted to be clear that I appreciated the check-in, and I was sorry how I expressed my hurt, but that I'm not sorry for my feelings. Let it be known that this conversation could only happen if it included an apology. That had become a theme. I'm not talking about this unless you apologize. Mind you, I don't remember the last apology I had gotten from him, minus the one to come next. He started getting angry and crying, saying that he doesn't see the point in throwing in bids or being vulnerable with his feelings if they are only ever going to be thrown back and used against him. Absolutely not. If the check-in was you throwing out a bid, then it never really was about me and how I was doing. I'm angry and grieving. You are not going to make her death about you and your feelings, and you're not going to make yourself out to be the victim here. Something in that statement made something clicked in him. I got a letter not long later apologizing for realizing that for a really long time, he had been prioritizing himself and his healing. He talked about how being raised by a narcissist will lead you to think that way. It was everything I had been waiting to hear for a really long time. And then he moved in with his parents for the month to think about all of that. Dealing with how you've been a shithead, his words, for so long really sucks. I get it, but that doesn't mean we're going to keep ignoring my needs/wants. If he couldn't consider them, then I am going to start doing it for myself. So we agreed to meet to talk about moving logistics. It was made really clear that the relationship wasn't on the table for discussion. The next day or so, I get a text saying that, since I've clearly moved on already because of how unfeeling and purely business the conversation was, that he didn't see a point in going to the next session together. Bold fucking assumption. This conversation solidified for me that it was over. I was being boxed into his narrative, so he could be angry with me and say that he wasn't the only one to blame for where we are and that I just can't take accountability. No one said anything about blaming anybody. If he had just left it at, "I'm not in a place to be in a relationship," we could have just left it at that and parted amicably. Now I'm getting messages that I can't take accountability? What are we trying to get out of this conversation? Am I being coerced into groveling and apologizing because he can't handle sitting in his own filth for too long, so someone else has to take on some of the burden of his fragile ego? I just said I'd be out before the end of the weekend and I'd send the divorce papers. The more I think about the relationship, the more I see how much of my soul he was sucking to make up for his incredibly low self-esteem. But the reason for this post and my screaming into the void, I'm scrolling through a forum and see that he's posted in a group looking for support for leaving his alcoholic wife. Accountability, my ass. After seeing and admitting how terribly he's treated me for so long, and once I act on a boundary, now I'm the worst person in the world, and the relationship fell apart because of my drinking and lack of accountability. Before anyone accuses me of hiding how much I actually drink, I drink a tall boy of beer or two in the evening with a shot or two of tequila. Yes, it used to be more than that, but that's been my go-to for more than a year, and it isn't every day either. I wouldn't normally air my dirty laundry on the internet, but seeing that post, the lack of any kind of context, painting himself as the victim, again, just really pissed me off. So here we are. If he ends up seeing the post, whatever. The apartment is gorgeous, and I feel like I can actually breathe for the first time in a really long time.